10C, number 1. In a certain class, midterm scores average out to 60 with an SD of 15, as do scores on the final. The correlation between midterm scores and final scores is 0.5. The scatter diagram is football shaped. Predict the final score for students whose midterm score is 75. We just did this, didn't we? It's exactly the same. What's that? Yeah. Was it 0.5? Was R 0.5 on the other one? Yeah. So we'll just do this again. So 60 with a 15 SD and 60 with a 15 SD. So somebody who's over here at 75, that's 15 points, which is 1 SD, which means I go up 15 point. Well, I go up 1 SD, which is 15 points, but 15 is too big. How much too big? That much. So I times the 15 by 0.5 and I get 7.5, and then I add 7.5 back to the 60 and I get 67.5. Do you guys want to see the other two? Anybody who wants to see me do 30 again? Okay. Okay, so letter D says the first point is unknown. If I don't know what your midterm score is, what's the best prediction for your final score? 60. Why? So there are two ways to look at it. If we don't know what your midterm score is, what's our best guess? 60. And if you score 60 on the midterm, what's your expectation for the final? It's also 60. Okay. The other way to look at it is we have no idea what your midterm score is. So what's the average on the final? 60. So whichever way you think about it, you end up with the same answer. And then number 3. The scatter diagram below shows the scores on the midterm and final in a certain course. 3 lines are drawn across the diagram. People who have the same percentile rank on both tests are plotted along one of these lines. So we have a football, and we have this line, and we have that line, and we have this line. So if you are in the 15th percentile for the X value, and you're in the 15th percentile for the Y value, which line are you going to land on? Well, on my drawing, it's green. On your book, it's dashed. What do we call that line? The SD line. Okay. One of these lines would be used to predict final scores from midterm scores. So this is midterm and this is final. Which line would we use to predict final scores given midterm scores? The blue line, which in the book is solid, and this is called the Y on X line. Why is it called the Y on X? Because if you give me an X, I can predict your Y. The Y values depend on the X values. Okay. Now, one thing that's going to be important to notice is the Y on X line cuts all of the columns in half. Now, there's another side of this. What if at the end of the year you told me I got 80 on the final? Can you predict my midterm score? How would you do that? Well, it's going to be the red line. What do you think the red line does inside that football? how do we draw the red line? What does it do? And the answer is it cuts all of the rows in half. You see that? Now, this is something I did not know until I took my 5th statistics class. I was under the assumption after 4 stats classes that the equation you use to predict y values is the same as the equation you use to predict x values. And it wasn't until this book that I realized that's not the case. So, and that makes sense, because if this number is 80, what would we expect that number to be? Bigger than 80 or smaller than 80? Smaller than 80. Because tall sons have tall dads that are shorter than them. Right? So if we did 75, 67.5 in that problem that we just did a little while ago, if I guessed 67.5, would 75 make sense there? No, it's too big. It would have to be smaller than 67.5. So the y on x line and the x on y line are different. And they have to be in order for everything to work the way that it's supposed to. Okay. Is that it for C?